This is the impressive Chesapeake Bay Bridge. Covering nearly 4.5 miles, it was the longest continuous over-water steel structure in the world when it was opened in 1952. It's part of the Blue Star Memorial Parkway, connecting Maryland's rural eastern shore with the Delmarva Peninsula. The peninsula is well known as a destination for outdoor activities and for its wildlife reserves, but it's also home to the Harriet Tubman Underground Railroad Byway. The byway is one of many designated scenic routes that takes you through America's capital region. Together, these roads tell the story of the country's past through some of the most picturesque drives in the land.
Harriet Tubman is a hero because of not only her self-quest for freedom, but also she came back 13 times and helped liberate family and friends from Maryland during the era of slavery. What's really wonderful about the Tubman Byway is when you travel the byway, you literally go back in time. It's a landscape that hasn't changed much since her time, which is pre-Civil War, 1850s, 1860s here in the United States.
The low-lying marshes and expansive farmland certainly have all the feel of the past, but travelling along the route nowadays is far easier than it would have been in Tubman's time. The byway starts off at the idyllic port of Cambridge on the shore of the Choptank River. It's a quaint colonial settlement and a favourite destination for those who love to get out on the water. So it is pretty quiet out here today. We are one of the only boats out on the creek. But back in Harriet Tubman's time, this would have been full. Hundreds of sailboats out here. They'd have been dredging for things like oysters and for crabs, but also being used as freight carriers. This was one of the deepest ports in Maryland, so really, really busy back then. Not quite like that now, but actually I've just been told that the landscape hasn't really changed at all. It hasn't really been developed very much at all over the last few hundred years. Cambridge is also home to the Harriet Tubman Organisation, a museum dedicated to the life of this inspirational woman.
Harriet Tubman was a person that hated slavery, hated the injustice that our Maryland laws and our U.S. laws had. Harriet was one of 10 children, and even when she was young, just could not understand how she was treated so harshly and why people had slaves.
Tubman's story begins where she grew up in Bucktown, just to the south of Cambridge. It was here at the local store where Tubman's bold defiance against her white oppressors first became apparent, and where she sustained a nasty head injury that resulted in a lifetime of blackouts.
Actually, her name was not Harriet Tubman, her name was Araminta Ross. So in the store, she would have been known as Minty. That was her nickname. And her name became Harriet Tubman because up north, she changed her name, and she changed her name to her mother's name, Harriet, and she married later on in life to a man named John Tubman.
Now, she got hit by one of these, is that right?
That's right.
So what's that?
That's a 2-pound counterweight. She was being leased to a farmer down the road towards Cambridge, and she was only 13 years old. And she said that all day long, her hair was driving her crazy. It looked like a bushel basket. So the master came to her, and he said, Minty, I want you to go down to the Bucktown Village store and get some things for dinner. So she grabs a shawl, she puts it on her head, and she comes on down to the store. And she's in here, and she's shopping. And then the next thing you know, this slave boy runs in. And behind him comes a man named Thomas Barnett. He runs in, and he tells Minty and the other customer in the store to hold the boy while he whips him. And she lets that overseer have it. So the two of them stand here and they argue, and that slave boy thought, I'm going to head on out that door. And he starts moving towards the door. And he gets almost there. And Thomas Barnett catches his shadow moving, and when he does, he grabs up this counterweight and hurls it at the boy to stop him from leaving, and accidentally hits her in the forehead. She believed that shawl was really important because she believed the shawl saved her life.
It was during those subsequent blackouts that Tubman began to experience the visions that inspired her quest for freedom.
Harriet fled north by means of going through the northern part of Dorchester County, through Caroline County, through central Delaware, all the way up to Wilmington and Philadelphia. Harriet returned first for her family.
And it was her most daring rescue because
The bounty on her head was so high, she was well known, there were images of her that were out there, people knew who she was, and yet she was still so smart and so clever and had that passion and had to come back and rescue her family that she avoided all of those pitfalls and traps, and she got them out.
But the Underground Railroad was neither a railroad or underground. It was, however, the escape route along which Tubman would risk everything for freedom.
The term Underground Railroad is just used to describe a network of people and conditions whereby people went to a safe house under the cover of darkness, remained there until it was safe enough to move again.
Over a 10-year period, it's estimated that Tubman escorted 300 slaves to freedom, earning her the nickname of Moses, after the biblical figure who led the Hebrews from enslavement in Egypt. Before travelling the Underground Railroad, I knew very little about Harriet Tubman, but since I've been here and visited the places where she lived and worked and met with people who are so keen to tell me everything they know about her, it's really brought her and her story alive.